The socialist mindset is endlessly fascinating in its delusion, its hypocrisy, its irrationality, and its utter lack of any responsibility. It's an outlook that's consistently short-sighted, infantile, and petulant. And where better to examine this malady than with AOC? The Congresswoman decided to go public and show the squalor in which her grandmother, Abuela, lives. Naturally, she regards this as the state's responsibility and blames the situation on evil right-wingers. But many observers wondered why she didn't help her grandmother herself. After all, when preening for the cover of Vanity Fair, she posed in a $14,000 suit. And she's also known for driving a Tesla that costs $60,000. One that she has a reputation for parking illegally, and decidedly selfishly. Of course, if AOC actually sorted out her own problems, then she couldn't adopt the pose of a victim that seems to be the modus operandi of her political peers. Thankfully, not everyone shares her outlook. So the right-leaning pundit, Matt Walsh, set up a GoFundMe campaign to raise cash to fix AOC's grandmother's home. And his followers quickly chipped in to the tune of $100,000. This could obviously have greatly benefited Abuela and her entire community. Yet AOC rejected it outright. Perhaps she'd rather let her own grandmother continue to suffer than to concede any ground to her political rivals. That doesn't seem terribly compassionate or intelligent. But it does mean that she can carry on pretending that she's a victim. And perhaps that's what's really important. I'd love to know what her grandmother thinks. If she's anything like the common sense matriarchs we have in Ireland, and from what I know of Puerto Rico, that seems pretty likely, then she might be tempted to clip her self-obsessed granddaughter round the ear. But it's not for me to say. What is for me to say is that nothing AOC did or said during this episode made any sense at all. Now, this brings us to Nicole Sanchez. Like AOC, Sanchez is a young woman of Hispanic descent who's been quite vocal in advertising her commitment to socialism. She's an internet personality better known as Nicole, who specialises in playing computer games, dressing up and dancing, but perhaps not too much on the way of political and economic analysis. Nicole really made a splash when dancing to OK Boomer in a Bernie Sanders top on a TikTok video.
Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer. Yeah, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer. Yeah, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer.
Okay. Now, that video's had over 40 million views. And Nicole had posted it under a caption declaring how much she hoped to trigger boomers, while declaring her support for Bernie in the 2020 election. Indeed, it was so successful, she decided to follow it up with a sequel, making an equally overt political statement.
Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer. Yeah, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer. Yeah, boomer. Whatever you say, boomer. Okay, boomer.
Now, for her second video, Nicole had, as you've seen, donned a Tax the Rich top. Those garments are sold through AOC's fashion label, and they retail for $60 each. So somebody's getting quite rich off them. And Nicole doesn't look to be doing too badly either. Here she is, posing with her new car, which looks pretty bloody expensive to me. I know top-of-the-range BMWs can easily go for $60,000. And if someone wants to put the actual price of this model in the comments, then feel free. But this wasn't quite enough, because Nicole promptly posted a video which was a guided tour of her new and exceedingly plush $2 million apartment in central Dallas. And while on that tour, she was quite clear on why she needs so much closet space. By which I mean 3 entire walk-in rooms full of clothes. It's because her very favourite things in the world are shopping and spending money. It's also worth pointing out that Nicole has achieved all this frankly eye-watering affluence at just 23 years of age. I'm trying to resist the urge to be too harsh here. Nicole seems a fairly sweet kid, but she's clearly utterly clueless. She's the most brazen of hypocrites, and she's been really quite sneering and dismissive about boomers. You know, the more mature and grounded generation who are rather better informed and not quite as foolish as she is. She also claimed that by tax the rich, she doesn't mean people like her, who live in $2 million apartments when they're barely out of their teens. No, she just means people richer than her. Yes, dear, we know. Because socialists never want their wealth to be taxed. They always exist at the cusp of the ideal tax level, and that level rises as their wealth increases. Like Nicole's idol, Bernie, who used to demand extortionate taxes for millionaires and billionaires, until he accrued a fortune of $2 million and a significant property portfolio, that is. Because then, he suddenly decided that we should only tax billionaires. And Nicole's ceiling will rise as her income rises too. Because you'll never meet a socialist who isn't a hypocrite. They'll always expect to keep all of their neat stuff, while demanding that other people pay for the policies they demand. They've been doing it for centuries, and they will never change. We saw similarly brazen behaviour from BLM. Around $100 million was sent to that organisation in donations. But there's no evidence of it being used in community projects of any description. Don't worry though. If you sent your hard-earned money into BLM, then it's gone to a good home. Literally. The history of socialism is brimming with personal ambition, empty rhetoric, and broken promises. And that will remain alluring to the naive, the foolish, and the optimistic. But hopefully, those with any real sense will continue to grow out of it too. If you've enjoyed this film, please like and subscribe. And if you're interested in these topics, I've written 2 books which go into them in extensive detail. They're called The Tyranny of the Left, and they're available on the links below. Please feel free to pick them up and let me know what you think. Thank you.